Howdy, all you delicious people! I'm here today to review Last Survivors. So, immediately with this title, I have to say it. So, this title feels like an oxymoron. Like we have the fewest many. Like it, that's what this movie should have been called, the fewest many. But you always have to have like survivor or survival in a survival movie, so it makes all the sense in the world to slap that title in there to get people intrigued, because it would easily get me intrigued, because anything that has the word like the survivalist or survivor or survival, like I love survival movies, and so easily this was like a freaking just like, how could I not go into this film? I love survival movies. I would watch them all the time, even if they're not that good. I don't really care. I just want to see survival movies where we go on and we have somebody in some secluded area that is to have to defend their way. I just recently saw Last Man Down, and that was kind of like a survival movie that turned into a big action film. And I wasn't expecting that here. I was kind of like expecting some kind of interesting visuals, which I kind of was given. Like, I'm also a sucker for POV stuff, where all of a sudden we have certain scenes where like the cameraman is like kind of following us in this story, and immediately when we have those shots, is like, yeah, I like this. I like this. Overall, like, the story, of course, is to be that Troy is telling Jake that World War III was to have happened when Jake was to be a young kid, and so Troy is now forced to go into the wilderness with Jake because their mother had died, or his mother had died, supposedly. And they're going off and running off to the forest to have it be the survival of the fittest, or if anybody is to go on and make their way to this camp, it's shoot first, ask questions never. Don't even bother thinking about asking a question, so because you might as well just shoot them. Just go ahead and just murder people. Just go ahead and just, as soon as they make their way, just plow without question. Because Troy just doesn't want anybody besides his son near him, by him, whatever. And it's basically tell Jake, when Jake is to desperately uh, start to do things on his own, because he technically has to. Troy is just like, shoot first, shoot him, whoever it is, just blow him away. Just go ahead and just murder people. Just do it, basically. So we have it to where it seems that Jake is to only know things from an skewed perspective, only watching things like, or only knowing about things from like the Swiss Family Robinson thing, where we of course have Jake who consistently references that in this movie. And it seems that Jake is to go on and be a religious person, even though really, I think he would much rather maybe be an atheist. Possibly. So, going into this film, the one thing that I have to say, it's really nice seeing Alicia Silverstone in this movie. It's been a spell. It's been a while since I've seen something with her in it, and I'm glad she's in this film. Really, this movie is kind of interesting because this does actually remind me of an Alicia Silverstone movie called Blast in the Past. There was this Brendan Fraser movie where we of course have Brendan Fraser, who is to be in this bunker, and Christopher Walken is Brendan's dad, and supposedly go into this underground bunker because supposedly they think that another world war is to be broken down, and that there was to be a bomb that fell, like a nuclear blast bomb that fell, when actually it was just some plane that crashed in their home. And so all of a sudden that leads to forcibly have Brendan's character go on and have to come to the surface to find out that there never was a nuclear fallout, and so on and so forth. Uh, we kind of have this story be somewhere ballparkingly close to that. So let's just say. So going into this story, I would have to say that I had some enjoyment. I had some enjoyment in this film. It's kind of interesting seeing Troy really going on and thoroughly just like when Jake is to kind of start to turn against his father slowly but surely. We have Troy who's like, "How dare you just like what's wrong with you, son? You have changed." Like it's interesting having Troy deliver all these lines, and even like the further and further we go into this movie, there is at some points in time where like I'm laughing and I shouldn't be, but like on like there's just some like there's line deliveries where we have Troy who is just so frustrated about Jake being defiant or being rebellious because he's 25 years old. He's going to start to he's gonna start be growing of the hairs, and he's gonna start to just finally decide to just, you know what, like I want to go and find out my own answers. I want to go and do my own thing. And so really we have one mission that is to force Jake to do that. So so with that said, what would I grade this movie? Because I don't even know. Like, I would probably say that this movie has to be. It's a. Like, I would say that it's an okay film. Right now, currently, the second this recording, there is a number of apps that, in fact, are selling this movie for like $6.99 or $9.99, depending on what price range you want to eventually go and rent this movie for. Uh, I don't know if I would go out of my way to put a price tag on this movie like that, but I can also let you know a convenient way to say that you can see this movie currently, considering it is just dropped. So, first off, there's a number of apps that I would recommend for people to Google search because I think that would be a convenient way for you to be able to find an app, hopefully. So, one app to suggest would be an app called Letter C Movies. So, a letter and then a word. Go ahead and search this app, and dare, in fact, be able to say that you can see any number of things, whether it is, of course, to be a brand new release or a certain TV show that you can't find because it's exclusively on a certain app that you don't want to pay some kind of goofy price for. Or you can also go on to and that's the most like convenient. Like I went in on that app, watched the movie, and didn't have a problem. You can also go on and search for an app called Fox HD Movies, which is to be the logo is to say so of Fox HD Movies. The title says something different. It'll say Play 1080p HD, but if you go on to search for Fox HD Movies, that app should hopefully, I'm assuming, pop up fairly easily. You can go onto a Google Play Store and be able to search the word TV Crush. And by golly, with all the powers and combined of apps and whatever, you can also go on and probably just go through a Google store search and just search for movie apps, and like there might be a app conveniently somewhere down the road in there because I've gone on and searched through that kind of thing a number of times to find a bootlegged app you can go ahead and say that you've seen a number of things. So, I think it's about roughly that time, since I've already spent 10 minutes talking about this film. Just go ahead and say that it's about that customary time, yet again, to just go into spoilers about this one, because I think we would just be way better off. Because it is about that time, yet again, to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time you get to spoil this movie. So, we are to get these like POV flashbacks of Jake's past, going on and having Jake be taken from his home via Troy, his father, and we of course have this man that is banging against this door, and so both Jake and Troy drive off. With this sled in hand, making their way to this cabin. We have Troy that's convincing Jake that they need to go on because the world has basically like gone downhill. Basically, that it's World War III, or it is World War III, and we have Troy going on and saying that there's been like a number of wars, which I guess 3 would be a decent number of wars. Or really, we could go on in like every single war that there has ever been through time. So, but now World War III has supposedly happened. So, we push on to have Jake being a much older 25-year-old man. And so both Jake and Troy are at this cabin, and so we have this huntsman that is to go out in the forest, and he is to accidentally trip one of these tripwires, and one of these traps, so to speak, that are to fire this gun is to kind of take down this huntsman. So all of a sudden, Troy is running out there, trying to, like, supposedly save their cabin by having to go on and slay yet another man, because we have it to where supposedly Troy is telling Jake that none of these people like believe in religion anymore. Everybody just believes in survival. Everybody's just gonna come in here and take everything that we have, and everybody's in desperation, and so on and so forth. So shoot first, ask questions never. So Troy goes out there and shoots this man and brutally just murders this man. Just horrifically just kills a man. So Jake goes out and is to make his way to kind of see what was going on. Because Troy is telling Jake to go and do a perimeter check after a certain number of minutes, which is 30. And so, since Jake is to hear shots being fired, he just goes out there anyways. So, it seems that Troy is to be injured here, and he's bleeding. So, Jake goes on and he's like checking out this body, assuming that this guy's dead. All of a sudden, this guy comes back to life for a little bit and just go on and have a cross. And he is going on and telling Jake, "Tell my daughter I love her." Dude, you didn't say what you didn't say what your daughter's name was, or what her address was, or you didn't say anything. How is he supposed to know who she is? So Jake goes on and tells Troy, because he draws this cross, and so Jake is a little confused because Jake thought Troy at some point was to say that all these people were savages, and it doesn't quite make sense that this guy is to, one, still be wearing a cross, because these people shouldn't be religious at this point, but then also that this guy went on and said about tell my daughter I love her, and again, Jake is telling Troy, it's like, well, I thought all these people were savages. Savages wouldn't give a about saying like I love you to somebody else, and so Troy is just coming up with reasons for Jake to believe him because Troy is just a manipulating piece of shit. Really, he really is. He's a manipulative piece of shit. He really is. So we go on and we have Jake, who's like, okay, all right. So in the very beginning of this movie, we have both Troy and Jake who are having fun, kind of doing some chores and like kind of chopping wood and all kinds of stuff. So, and then they get interrupted. So we go back and have these two going back and doing chores. And so all of a sudden, Troy is to start to be able to not really be able to do his job all that well, to where he collapses. Jake goes and finds Troy bleeding, and so now Jake is grabbing Troy and putting him into a bed, and Troy's going on and saying like, "Hey, like, get the gauze and like kind of like figure out a way to just kind of like take care of Troy." Jake realizes that they are completely out of gauze, and so Troy is just like, "Well, get some very warm towels. Just kind of just get the towels and toss them into this boiling water." So Jake does so to Troy, and so Troy is to realize that they're going to need a little bit more than just some as warm as you can get towels. Troy goes on and tells Jake that he thinks that it's time for Jake to do a mission, to go out and go to this one spot that he's going to dig this little box and go on and find this book that is to have a book about outside medicine and where to go. So Jake goes on and finds this tree and kind of digs this thing out, and so he goes to this one hospital, and so Jake is just supposed to bring back like antibiotics and steroids. So who's gonna be pumping iron after this? Yeah, I'm working my glutes. It's not that kind of steroid. Come on, like there's like you can use steroids for other things. I'm just having fun. So Jake goes to this hospital, and we have Henrietta that is going to this location and is just kind of looking around. Henrietta, of course, is Alicia Silverstone's character. She's looking around. We have Jake, who's kind of just hiding in the background. She can't really see him, so she walks off. So we had Jake that at one point was looking at some magazine that one of the dead people had left. And Jake is to find this magazine, and he finds a picture of a woman. And so Jake is growing of the hairs. And Jake needs a woman. He needs a lover. So Jake goes on, and he's kind of watching Henrietta from a distance, kind of like seeing her. And thinking that it's possible that this girl could be like that girl in the magazine. And that maybe not everybody is to be a mutant, so to speak, like from Blast of the Past. So, sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable here. So, we go into this story, and so Jake is to go on and is to do this mission. And so Troy's like, who did you have to kill? Who'd you have to kill, Jake? And so Jake goes on and he's like, well, I had to kill some woman that was over by this place that I had to go to. And Troy's like, well, are you sure you weren't followed? You sure you weren't followed, Jake? Jake's like, yeah, I'm sure I wasn't followed. Like, are you sure you killed her, Jake? Are you sure you killed her real good? We have Troy who's at like consistently like, how many people did you murder, Jake? That's all that matters. They don't get back here. I hope you murdered 30 people on your way back here, Jake. So Jake goes on, is like, yeah, here's your medication, go on and take it. So we go on, we have Troy who's just really impressed by Jake and that everything has gone well. And so we go further on in this film, and so at one point we have Troy who's realizing that the beef jerky is now gone. That weirdly there's some suspicious things afoot, and so we go on. We have Jake who's like, well, maybe it's because of the foxes had got in, and I'm just like, why not just murder the foxes then? Like, that's the meat right there. Just like we have Troy who's like, murder everything and just don't think twice about it. Why not just murder the foxes then? What's the difference? Just murder any animals, sadly enough, because you're murdering any human that just steps your way into being a thing in existence. So we have Jake, that is to say, it's like, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to hunt down a deer to bring back for us. And Troy's like, well, yeah, like, you're going to have to be your own man, Jake. You're going to have to go and do these missions and so on. So we have Jake who goes, and because Troy is basically telling Jake it's like he's really becoming a man and that he should be going on and doing these things. So Jake goes on, and instead of going, of course, where Troy is to want him to go, Jake instead goes on to Henrietta's place. Just basically walks up there with a gun and is to kind of like, hey, how's it going, kind of thing. So we go on, we have Henrietta that is to have this guy whip a gun on her. And so she's like, well, hey, like, what are you doing here? It's like, you know what, like, how about this? It seems like you've seen better days, so how about you like go on and take a shower and all this stuff, and like I'll give you some food, and then you can go on and leave if that's what you want to do. So this guy's going and taking a shower with kind of like his guns by the shower. And so Jake all of a sudden is taking this really hot shower, and he's like, ah, like, it's too hot. Like, fix it or I'll break it. And Henrietta is telling Jake, it's like, well, you can turn the other knob the other way. And so all of a sudden, Jake is to adjust this, and he's like, yeah. So while Jake is in the shower, Henrietta goes in and takes Jake's guns and hides them somewhere. And so when Jake is to go on after the shower and to realize that these guns are gone, he brings in this knife and nothing else, not even a stitch of clothing. Jake just goes in there, twig and berries hanging in the breeze, and Jake goes on and is to kind of like, hey, I can kill you if I have to. And Henrietta is realizing this guy is not going to kill a soul. But so we go on and we have it where, like, I guess since Henrietta is to just have seen some manhood going on, she's probably just like, I want me a piece of that. because she might not have had a piece in a while. I don't know. We don't know with the story. So we have Henrietta that's telling Jake, it's like, well, hey, like, you don't have to go to your back to your cabin and back to your father right away, because Henrietta is to go on and give this guy a meal, but not only that, she's gonna give him a thing of meat to bring back to his dad and him. And Jake is to go on and mention that I guess Troy used to say that his father used to say wrapped in plastic, ready to go. And so when we have Jake who's seeing this girl going and putting away leftovers and wrapping it in plastic and then putting it into some fridge, because I guess like this world has never heard of Tupperware. I Let me know in the comments below if you're a person that puts leftovers or whatever in a freezer. How do you do it? We have like Tupperware stuff. Very rarely do we have like aluminum foil and stuff like that we have to put on things, because unless we don't have a lid for something, most of the time it's just like it's in a Tupperware like container, or sometimes it's like being bagged. I would never want to just go on and like plastic anything. Even though I'm used to doing that kind of stuff, but I think plastic wrap like that is just really expensive. It seems like a lavish, like a really high end, like thing to just be doing. I don't know. It just seems too la-di-da for me. But let me know in the comments below. Like, well, I do that all the time. I don't know. I'm not trying to rile anybody up with how they store away their food and stuff. Anyways, pushing on. So we have Jake make it back to Troy after Jake has to tell Henrietta goodbye, after like they have technically slept in the same house, not in the same room together. So we have Jake who goes back to Troy, and so Jake is to have this prime cut meat, and Troy's like, why is it that you didn't bring back the whole entire deer? And Jake was like, well, hey, the wolves got to it. Yeah, Jake and them wolves, I tell ya. Man, those things are vicious. You would think that one of them would be killed at this point. But no, they're just going to keep on coming. So Jake has mentioned that a wolf had gone to the deer, and like this is the only thing that he could get. And Troy's like, well, that's kind of weird, because that seems like a very clean cut that you had gotten there. It seems a little weird. And Jake is like, well, yeah, like, I don't know, I just was really good at with a knife that day. And Troy's like, there's something fishy about this. So we go on and we have, after the first time here, we have Henrietta that goes off to Officer Sharman and is to just kind of file a report stating that this guy Jake was to go into her house with a gun. And so she kind of just wants, of course, this officer to have some kind of information for this guy. And so when she spends more time with Jake, all of a sudden she'll get more information through this officer. So we have Troy go on and kind of look and kind of make his way to just kind of inspect things. He's like, there's something that's not right here. So Troy goes on and is to find the leftover beef jerky. And so now we have it to where Troy is confronting Jake about this. And so he's like, well, hey, found the extra beef jerky. Must have been that there was some animal somewhere that was trying to, like, nest it away, trying to hide it somehow. And Jake is like, well, yeah, that seems weird because I don't think an animal would do that. And Troy's just like, well, yeah, I'm sure it wasn't. So all of a sudden, Jake, because he's in defiance of his father, some way or another, Jake is just scrubbing these floors. What's wrong with you, Jake? How far you have fallen, Jake. Like, man, we just have this guy who is just going on, and one little slip up, one little disbelieving thing, all of a sudden, like, Jake is just going out of his way to just be defiant to his own dad, heaven forbid. So, we have Troy here that's going and telling Jake, it's like, well, hey, like, you need to go on and just clean these floors until, like, you can, like, trust me again, Jake. Jake is like, well, that's going to be a long time from now. So, we finally go on and just have Jake, who's running away, who's getting his stuff and he's leaving, because Jake is to finally tell Troy the truth. Because Troy is to ask Jake if he really killed that woman or not, and Jake is saying no. And then Jake is to finally tell his father the truth, that he had gone on and spent some time with this woman, because Jake is at some point going to realize that at some point Troy had him with his mother, so Jake, if Troy is going to die, how is he going to go on and eventually have a kid also? Plus, Jake had gone on and seen this National Geographic magazine with a picture of a woman in it. And so Troy is like, from where? And Jake is like, well, from all the people that you killed, they have some stuff left on them. And so Troy is like, well, show me where this is. So Jake has his own private stash, and Troy is also just so ticked at Jake for hiding all this stuff. And Jake is like, well, you've lied to me too. And Troy's like, I've always told you the truth, Jake. I've always told you everything. Yeah, right, bullsh. Like, we find out that Troy has told Jake a truth that only Troy can believe. A story of which that only Troy is to say is true, because he is cuckoo for freaking Cocoa Puffs. So Jake is to run off to Henrietta, and so we go on and we have these two characters going and spending a little bit more time with one another, to the point of them going on and kissing and doing a little bit more than that. And so we have Jake and Troy, or what am I saying here? We have Jake and Henrietta. Let's get that right. And Jake is saying that he wants Henrietta to go back with him to the cabin, so I guess Jake can show this girl off to Troy, so maybe Troy will leave him alone about this whole thing. So, and I'm like, this is just like Blast from the Past. This is just like the thing. Like, I'm just waiting for, like, Jake to not know, like, where his cabin is, and then he has to figure out where his cabin is again, and then they have to, like, kind of backtrack where it is. But we have it where, like, Jake is at some point going to be like a millionaire, because maybe he has, like, stocks in like a number of things that are like millions upon millions of dollars. So I'm basically reviewing Blast to the Past while I'm reviewing this movie. I'm double whammying it right here and here, or right here and there. So Jake goes on with Henrietta, and she's telling Jake that she has some personal stuff to deal with, and she wants Jake to go off for a couple days, even though what her and him did were amazing, the bang a bang, so to speak. Henrietta needs some time. So Henrietta goes off to this police officer, and so Officer Sharman is mentioned that Troy was to go on and kidnap his son Jake, and was to go and try to attempt to burn Jake's mother's house. And so we never really get to the full story of this, because when we seem to get to the full story, the movie ends. But it is what it is with this story. So the officer is going and giving Henrietta a picture of Troy, and Henrietta's like, well, I've never seen Jake's father. I don't know what he looks like. And we also have a missing persons thing that, of course, Henrietta is to grab. So we also have Henrietta that is going to speak with, I guess, her ex-lover, Andy, at this diner. And Andy's going on and saying how convenient it was to get to where she was, and how this place is really in the middle of nowhere. And Henrietta is mentioning how she never really wanted to live in the city, and that she begged Andy and her kids to come here, and they just didn't want to, because Andy is to say that their kids are to be at home at where they are to be at home with him. So we have, of course, where Andy's kind of handing off Henrietta something, and so we have both Andy and Henrietta like going into this argument. For all of a sudden, Jake had followed Henrietta to this place. Jake goes on and tackles this guy because he doesn't know any better, and so that goes on and has all these characters kind of go on their separate ways. But Jake is going on and telling Henrietta, like, well, I don't know how to get back to my home from here, and so now Henrietta has to give Jake a ride. So Henrietta goes with all of her stuff back into her place, and Jake is to spot this missing persons poster. I'm like, oh my god, who is this guy? Like, how do you have a photo of him? And Henrietta's like, well, this guy is just a missing guy. So we have Jake go back to his father, and because Jake is to find out that it seems that Henrietta had kept things from him, kept the fact that this girl was still with a man, her husband. So we have Troy, who of course is like, well, yeah, all women are just liars and they want to get in your pants, and so to speak. So like I was expecting this woman to be no different. Blah blah blah. So we go on and we have Troy, who is to forcibly take Jake to this one, this little underground cellar thing. And Troy is going and locking this thing up for Jake to be stuck here. And so Troy is to go on and is to go and try to kill Henrietta, because like so that way like Jake will stop the ways of which that he is going on and doing, because we have it to where this girl is consistently putting thoughts into Jake, forcing him to realize the truth, which there wasn't an actual World War III, and yada yada yada. And so Jake is confronting his father about this, that like none of what Troy really told him was true, and what is the real truth. So Troy is going off to Henrietta's place, and Jake is able to bash his way uh, to get out of this like underground cabin thing. I don't know what this shed. Close enough. So we have Jake running off to get to Henrietta's place, and so Henrietta is to all of a sudden be visited by these officers, and they're going on and talking about what had happened with Andy and Jake. So we all of a sudden go on here and have Jake, who is making it back to Henrietta's place. And so all of a sudden we have these officers who are whipping out their guns. And Troy is to go on and shoot one of the officers. And so Officer Sharma is going on and dragging this detective back to, I guess, a safer place. So we have Jake trying to protect Henrietta, and we of course have Jake, who is trying to find his dad in this barn. And so when Jake and Troy are trying to talk to one another, we all of a sudden have Troy, who bashes Jake, knocking him out with this gun, and going after Henrietta, going and trying to shoot her, while Henrietta is in this house, and Troy is going on and saying that Henrietta is to be some snake and to be some liar and so on and so forth, and Troy is to know her kind and so on and so forth, where it's like, oh, okay, so we might have had Troy just been hurt by his previous wife, so much so that he was inconsolable to the point of him just going off into the wilderness to just get away from like the world. So we have Henrietta getting out of her place, and so she's going on and getting into her car, and we have Troy, who's wanting to go and zero on in with this sniper rifle to go and kill this woman. And we have Jake, who comes in at the nick of time to tackle Troy through this window, and he falls through this window, and then he goes on, and Jake is to be like on top of Troy's body, and Troy is going on and telling Jake to kill him, and that this isn't a democracy. So, or this isn't a dictatorship or something like that. So Jake is to go on and kill his father and shoot him, because as per always for every one of these stories, we always have it where every single one of these things is like, well, yeah, like kill or be killed. So we go on, and we, I guess, have Jake, who goes back to his dad's cabin to just make his survival, that makes no sense, to continue to just do what he's doing out in this cabin somewhere. And so Henrietta is to go on and leave Jake this letter. Like, okay, this is kind of weird. So we have Henrietta leaving this letter to Jake, mentioning how at some point she was to feel exactly how Troy's father used to feel about things. But it seems that Henrietta, after being with Jake, is to start to think she has a second chance. that she can turn things around. And so Henrietta is to make her way back to her husband and her kids back in the city. And so we of course have Jake going on after reading this letter to be able to figure out where exactly his mother is to still be living because she's still alive. And he's knocking on this door and he's hoping that this is to actually be her. Because what happens is we have Jake, after he is to read this letter, he goes on, and we of course have Troy, who is to leave this last thing that is to be called No Man's Land, where Jake is supposed to travel to uncover this thing that says "If I die." This little container thing. So Jake goes on and opens this thing up, and it is to be information about Jake's mother. And so he goes to this house and is to, of course, knock on this door, thinking it's like, well, I hope you are who I think you are, or it could be somebody else, because a certain number of time has passed. So, with that said, I think that technically does cover most of this movie. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about Last Survivor. Let me also know if there's something that I probably forgot about this movie, because I'm sure there's probably a number of things at some point. But I think that this movie's all well and good enough for me to go on and just call it a day. Because we just consistently have this like kind of repetitive thing where Troy's going on and giving accusations for Jake. Well, like, son, how could you? Like, how could you not trust me? How could you, like I'm telling you the truth, Jake. How could you think that I'm lying to you? It's like you're only telling him the truth that you only believe, and like that's not telling him the truth. That's going on and just like manipulating him or blinding him to a world that Jake is going to go out of his way to rebelliously see. What Troy could have done is really given Jake the option, but we really just have it where Troy is just like, no, like, I'm just going to like hold to my guns, and because I want to live this world and I'm happy living this kind of world, and Jake be damned, pretty much. So yeah, so with that said, that I think that's all that I wanted to say about this movie. I'm going to go out of my way to say it's about that time for me to wrap this up. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.